Seen you for a while.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to Hesston High School. It's great to have you. My name is Ben Proctor. I'm the superintendent here in USD 460 and have been so for 7 years, which puts me in the veteran category when it comes to school superintendents. I guess I have good news in that you don't have to listen to me primarily this evening. We've got a lot of folks that are going to share with you, and I'll be available for answering questions and things like that you may have, but really looking forward to sharing more information. So our commitment really through the month of February has been to inform as much as we possibly can. We have a bond project that we are proposing to the community, and it's a sizable project in the scope of what we're doing and the elements that are a part of it. And so we want to share from the perspective of those that are most familiar with those details. And as we bring them up, I'll let them introduce themselves. Many of them you'll recognize. Some have been here for a while, and they can share from their perspective. Before we do that, we want, as part of an effort to inform, we want to make sure that you know where to go to get the latest information on this project. So if you're familiar with our website, it's hestonschools.org. So anytime you go on that website, there's some kind of red headings, and we put some information about this meeting as kind of a banner portion of the website, but I've changed it on you a little bit. If you went there, a week ago, you would have seen something that says Facilities Update. It's now called Bond Project. So when you click on that, and it looks a little bit different if you're on a mobile device or a computer. If you're on a phone, you'll have to scroll those red links on the left side. You'll see those first. You have to scroll down. You can, of course, click on those to get more information. But here you'll notice there's updates from today even, where we have live stream information for those that want to attend through the live stream. Bill, are we picking up some folks there? Which reminds me, as we do these meetings, we want to keep them informal, and if you have questions as we go, please don't hesitate to just raise your hand, and we'll work through questions as we go, and we may have some online as well, and Bill will kind of monitor that. But here's where you'll find a lot of information. We're trying to do our best to update these links with things that we feel like are important for you to know. We recently put a frequently asked questions section. There's a lot of financial components or implications that we want you to be aware of. We'll have slideshows from these community meetings. The live stream is recorded and will be posted and shareable. So there's just a lot of good information for people to stay informed and to be aware of everything that's going on with the project.
I have a quick question about the homepage there that you had.
Yeah.
The homepage, could you go back to it just really quick?
Sure.
So that banner that says Hesston USD 460 Bond Project Information Sessions will be held February 20th and 24th at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Now, is that referring to these meetings that we're sitting in currently?
Well, it would be, except it should say the 21st.
Oh, okay.
So you caught an error. It's probably somebody else that did that. So.
Good thing that's not $32 million right there.
Yeah, it's not.
That's right. Good thing it is.
Okay. Any other questions before I transition here? Sorry about that. Okay. Our first person, again, a lot of our folks who will present this evening, you know well. Some of you might know Mr. Dalston really well. But we're going to have him share a little bit about the academic area that he's been working in for a few years. Okay.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, and appreciate you getting out tonight. As Mr. Proctor said, I think I was chosen for this just because I have been here I am the longest serving teacher in the Hesston School District right now. So, I don't know what that speaks to necessarily. I guess it speaks to I found a place that I really love and have been able to raise my family here and wouldn't want to teach anywhere else. So anyway, but that being said, I do want to talk a little bit about our current academic area, because for many of you, if you weren't a student here, and even if you were a student here, the building has changed. If you were a student here more than 20 years ago, the building is different. The academic part of the building it'll look different to you if you haven't been back there. There have been some things that have happened and so on. So, and if you haven't been a student here, many of you, the only part of our school that you really get to see on a regular basis is really this part of the building, the commons, the auditorium, and the gym areas. And so I would really encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to go back and tour the academic part of our building, I would really encourage you to take advantage of that and go do that, because some of the things that I'm going to talk about may not make a lot of sense to you until you can see them for yourself. Okay. So when the building was built, and this happened long before I was here, even though I've been here a long time, the thing that was big in education at that point was this idea of open classrooms. And so and my understanding is that when the building was built, there were really no walls between classrooms. All right, there may have been a partial wall, but then at the back of the classroom, there were like 10-foot openings that were between classrooms. That's my understanding of how the building was built, or why it was built. And that was a big thing, I think, at that time frame in education. Well, it didn't take very long to figure out that maybe that wasn't the best for education, because I remember even when I was first here, there was still a little bit of that happening. And I'm looking around, and there's a couple of you that may remember this, but I taught in the current room that I'm in, and then the room right next to me was Mr. Bruce Cray. Some of you know Bruce. And when we get to teaching, both of us have pretty big voices when we get to teaching. And I remember it was a parents' night we had, and he was doing his thing, I was doing my thing, and it was within about 3 weeks that there was a wall that went up between our two rooms, because it was really distracting. It really was. So that was kind of the idea of the building. And so even before I got here, there were some steps that had been taken to kind of close up the open classroom concept. But what started to happen then was that when you start putting these walls up, you create some really wonky and really funky spaces. And so, and also, I have up here, I should probably follow my PowerPoint, but we have classrooms now, like my classroom right now, I have 8 walls in my classroom. So not 4 walls, I have 8. And I have a fairly good-sized classroom in terms of square footage. But when you go in there, the usable square footage in my classroom is not that awesome because of the 8 walls. There's just weird angles and so on. Mr. Bowerly's classroom is really strangely shaped. And a lot of that is because we put up walls to try to close in the openness that we started the school with. So it's interesting. I just came from another meeting and told them I was coming here, and they said I was going to talk about the current academic area, and this person said, yeah, your building is broken. And I mean, this is from a community person, and it really is. It's just funky, and it really is. So I guess I'll just leave it at that. But funky classroom space, irregular sized classrooms. I mean, my room is probably, I don't know, it probably has 1.5 times the square footage that Mr. Bowerly's room has, I would say. And I can say we teach really close to one another. A lot of wasted space, a lot of nooks and crannies and so on, that because we put up these walls in the hexagonal shapes and so on. So it's kind of an odd shape. Access to classrooms. We still have classrooms that you have to walk through another classroom to get to. That was really much more of an issue when I first came, but it's still an issue. I can think of about 3 or 4 that in order to access the classroom, you have to walk through somebody else's classroom, which that isn't great. You know, you're trying to teach and somebody's walking through your classroom, and you know, it's just, that's not an awesome thing either. I'll talk a little bit about some safety concerns too, with the nooks and the crannies. You know, you go out, even if the teachers are out in the halls, they can see about 30 feet, and then there's a corner. And so there's literally things that could be happening very close to where I'm standing out in the hall, and I would have no idea that there was anything going on because it was behind a corner. So if we could straighten some things out, that would be really nice for us. That would also be really nice for our students, so that we could make sure that there was a more positive presence out there as well. A lot of outside doors, which, I guess that's maybe a good thing and a bad thing, but problem is a lot of access points for people that could get in right now. And so anyway, just some things like that. And then the lack of natural lighting of light in the building. It's a lot of classrooms have no natural light. And so I think about this, and I'm thinking about my own son, my own kids. They come to Singers at 7:15 in the morning. Then they're athletes, so they practice after school. And they'll come to school when it's dark, and they'll leave when it's dark. And they never see the light of day while they're in this building. All right? I just don't think that's good for anyone. All right? And so it'd be really nice if we could get some natural light in our building, which I think the new project will allow. The building is a 50-plus-year-old building. And it's heavily used. There's just some infrastructure things that need to be addressed. We have some issues with our restrooms, for example, and just some other things throughout the building. With some plumbing throughout the building and some electrical stuff and so on that just need to be addressed. And that could certainly be addressed without a bond project, probably. But that's just the reality of it. So I think that's about all I have, unless there's some questions about the facility. I would encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to maybe go out and take a tour. I'd be happy to walk you through there. I'd love to take you out and maybe leave you and challenge you to find your way back out. Just kidding, I wouldn't do that. But some of you that have been in the building, you recognize that. And I look at some of your former students, and you look back at your freshman year, first day of your freshman year. Some of you are nodding knowingly. It's like, it's a little bit difficult to navigate. And you get used to it, and you adjust very, very quickly. But I've been here 35 years, and there's still places in this building where I'll go and go, okay, I'm not quite sure how to get out of here, but I'll figure it out. So, anyway.
Yeah, I do have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, the building is a broken design. The building is a failure. The children, the kids, do not have natural light coming into their classrooms. This is all unfortunate. But why is it, so you're saying the open design was a failure. The open design, that idea, why was it implemented? Whose idea was it? What makes you think this new idea, in 20, 30 years, people won't be saying this new idea was a failure?
I don't have any guarantees on that. I'm just saying I think natural light's a good thing.
I 100% agree. My question is,
I think having more regularly shaped classrooms,
I agree.
so that you have more flexibility, I guess.
100%. That would be a wonderful thing. My question is, what makes you think the design that has been discussed and presented is going to be a success in 20 to 30 years?
Well, I think it addresses those things.
5 to 10. It addresses a lot more than those things. So, okay. I agree with your points that those are unfortunate, but hey, you're not going to answer my question.
I don't know. I don't think I understand your question quite.
The open design, you have said very clearly, the open design was a failure.
Yes.
The walls needed to be constructed. There is no natural light. I agree with you. That design, why was it done? Is it done everywhere? Is it a standard practice? Why?
I don't know why the building was built that way. I just know.
So why do you think a non-standard practice, which I would say it is non-standard practice what is being proposed, why do you think that non-standard practice is going to be a success when the non-standard practice you are discussing is indeed a failure?
I think I'm going to let Mr. Proctor deal with that question.
So we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it at the end. Next up, we have our fine arts teachers. I'm going to let you guys come and share a little bit about maybe existing facility, but what could be possible in a new facility too.
I know a lot of you here, but for those that don't know me, I'm Lyle Graverson. I am the band teacher here and have been for, I think this is my 14th year, so I've been here for a little while now. And it's probably not a surprise that a bond project that proposes new music rooms and a new auditorium would be favored by the band director, but I actually want to kind of talk more big picture, because I think most of you would expect me to say that I'm in favor of those things, and I'll talk a little bit about our music facilities. But the reason I am such a passionate supporter of this bond project is because I really feel like our facilities should support the interests and the talents of all the students in the district. And I think one of the great things about this bond project is it does that. And as you're looking ahead, not just like what do we need right now, but what do our students need for the next 20 years, I think if you want to be a competitive school district, you need to have all kinds of programs that support students' interests. And just to make sure I don't miss any, this bond project, sorry, if you guys all had instruments, I would not be nervous at all right now. This is out of my element, so if my tell is my ears turn bright red. So if I get a Rudolph ear thing going on, you know I'm really like out of my element. Anyway, this bond project proposes brand new art rooms for both middle school and high school students, and a central hub area around the library that would be a perfect place for those students to display their talents. Obviously, our theater students would have a new auditorium to show off their talents in. Brand new robotics area. If you don't know anything about our robotics program here, it's great. It gives them facilities over the next 20, 30 years for that program to continue to grow. New shop and enlarged shop area. New audio visual, like our Swather Sports Network has been such a vital tool for our community, especially through COVID. I only see that program continuing to grow. It is going to renovate and enlarge potentially the pit stop area where kids get hands-on experience doing like business type models and things like that. And then obviously it updates our music facilities as well. And at the risk of sounding self-indulgent, just to kind of update you if you haven't seen, if after we're done you go to the room that's right behind our stage auditorium here, that is our music room / band room, choir room, whatever you want to call it. And if you walk in there, you'll see right away it's one of the most dated areas in the building. You just walk in and there's multiple people that have graduated quite a while ago, now have students here that walk in and go, wow, it looks the exact same as when I was here, and that's not necessarily a compliment. There's just nowhere, there's not enough space. When you walk in there, you'll see all the percussion instruments. You basically run into them as you walk into the room. And these are all pre-COVID issues. Nothing that I'm discussing today was created by COVID. This predates COVID. And so there's just not a space in there, and there's nowhere to expand that room to, because you'd be expanding into the hallway that you get to the Ox Gym. There's just nowhere to go. You can't come into the auditorium's already too small. And the middle school band rooms, if anything, maybe even worse, we affectionately call it the dungeon at the middle school. It's in the basement, so there's nowhere to expand. It's not handicap accessible. If we ever had a middle school student that wanted to take band in a wheelchair, there's no way for them to get down there. We probably have it flood 3 to 5 times a year, just because different things will back up or things like that, and we'll get flooding in the band room. And there's frankly not enough storage there either. And then, I don't want to steal all her thunder because I know she's going to talk about the auditorium as well, but the auditorium's just not big enough. Like, we can't hold any of our concerts in here. Occasionally, if we have a small enough group where we think the audience is going to be small enough. But so my seniors graduate without really getting that experience of performing concerts where they should. You know, and I would kind of compare it to, like, if we lost our stadium and our varsity football team had to play on the soccer field with the fans in lawn chairs, they could play the game, and we can have concerts in the gym. That's not the atmosphere that the football team deserves, and I don't feel like the gym is really the atmosphere that our music students deserve. And if you just put yourself, even in the mindset of an audience member, if you go to the gym and you're sitting in the bleachers and the lights are on, that's a very different atmosphere than if you walk into an auditorium and the house lights come down and the stage lights come up. It feels very different. And when my kids go to contests every year, a lot of times that's the first time they've been on a stage all year under the lights. And so I just feel like this project, and I just talked a lot about the music, but if you go back to all those programs that I listed, a lot of those programs, along with our great sports teams, those are the reasons kids get excited to go to school in the morning. You know, we got great test scores and great graduation rates, but I don't think kids get up in the morning and go, I'm going to go to high school today to help our test scores look good. You know, they get excited about those programs, and I feel like our current facilities are just falling a little short for those students. And if they're falling short and not meeting the needs like they should now, if this bond project doesn't pass and we go another 20 years of kind of kicking the can down the road with just trying to maintain what we have, I think you run the risk of kind of falling behind some of the other districts that have those programs and those facilities. And you know, this is such an amazing community, and I think people want to live in a community like this. But I think when you look at the, I don't know, Goddards or Andovers and some of the things that those big districts can offer, we don't want to fall so far behind in some of those programs and opportunities for our students that you feel like your students are missing out on some of those experiences and opportunities that a bond project, and I know it's big, I know it's a large amount, but I really passionately feel like if you want to provide the proper opportunities for all students, regardless of what their interests are, I think it's going to take something of this scale to make sure that we have the facilities to meet those needs. And so I just think, if you don't just think about right now, you think about how you want the Hesston School District to look 20 years from now. I think if you're not planning for all those extra experiences and you're just going, okay, do we have standard classrooms for kids to sit in and athletic facilities for them to play sports in, okay, we're good, that's enough. I think a lot of kids maybe fall short and don't get what they really need to thrive and find their interests and succeed. So I'll get off my soapbox now and pass it over to Mrs. Funk, but I really, really think that's where this bond issue can really, really be a great thing for the students in this community.
I'm Diana Funk, and I teach elementary music, grades kindergarten through 4th, and I think this is my 12th year in the district. I did some teaching in 4th grade and then transitioned to music about 7 years ago. So I agree with a lot that Lyle said, and that we have a lot of the same bullet points, but I'm going to speak specifically about the elementary music program, kindergarten through 4th. It's a real challenge to convert a gym into a theater. The lack of lighting, acoustic design, and sound system has just been challenged year after year to bring that many kids into an area like that. And it's a challenge to make a gym have a theatrical ambiance, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think our elementary kids deserve that just as well, to be able to get on stage and to perform and to have that feeling of what that's like. The second big piece is the challenge of scheduling the gym in order to even have that concert. Athletic facility or athletic events take up most nights in the gym, weekends, and then Lyle mentioned a lot of the other programs, robotics tournaments and so forth. Those are also in the gym, and so we fight for that each year, and it's costly to convert it, and it's also it creates a lot of extra tension. If we were to have a theater or an auditorium where we could have fine arts activities in that space, what it's intended for, I think that would be just a really good starting point. This current stage will not even allow me to do one grade level performance. Last year with COVID, I wasn't able to do a kindergarten through 4th program, but I still really wanted to showcase my 4th graders. And so I wanted to do a program, and I explored the possibility of having 70 students on risers on different levels, possibly building out a small stage here and at the sides. And one thing COVID has taught us is that we need more space. And I wasn't even attempting to put them at safe distancing. I was just going to try to get them all on stage at one time. And then I ran into, well, now I'm going to have to limit who you can bring to the program. And so I just started exploring other options in the community, churches, college. And I wasn't able to find a spot where I could have a lot of elementary kids together to perform, unfortunately. And the weather in Kansas does not exactly lend to outdoor activities either. So we did get the job done. We did have a 4th grade performance, but it was tough to find that space. And I think the elementary kids deserve, again, a nice space to perform. I don't think it's unique for a school of our size to have a nice auditorium. I think it's the standard, and I think it's the need has been proven. We're not asking for something that's above and beyond or elaborate. It's just something that will help us teach our fine arts curriculum. One of the standards of music is performance. Performance can look a lot of different ways, but for a well-rounded child, I think they should have that opportunity to get on a stage and really shine. I mean, there is students that are going to take it past high school and take it past college. So we need to give that our opportunity starting with really young kids. I appreciate the community support through the elementary programs. Each year on our program, I put the words community, music, tradition, and it's worked into the musical program. We put it in our PowerPoint. We're very purposeful and intentional about representation from the middle school, from high school, and most importantly from our community. I try to always bring a community guest star into the performance because I think our kids can look to those kids or look to adults and middle school, high schoolers as role models. And so we want to continue with great programs. It would be nice to be able to have the community be part of those. I'm really passionate about incorporating the college in town with a program that we're doing, or just having a community being able to use the auditorium as well and do some collaboration with them. My goal as an elementary music educator is to get kids excited about music. And that performance is just one little taste of it. I have kids come back year after year and say, that left a memory. I liked performing. That was really fun. I never thought I could do it. But giving them that opportunity they come back with little stories and so forth that have just been wonderful. We create the ambiance the best we can in the gym, but it can be done better. And I think the auditorium would really support that. By having an auditorium, it gives us the opportunity to take performance to the next level. And I think we're ready to do that by allowing kids to have a real stage performance.
How many do we usually have at the Christmas program? What's your best estimate, Diana?
Around 1,000 people watching. Judy Reimer, I think, once told me it was the largest attended event. And I think that if I were to do, if the Bond project went through and I was to do a concert, I would do 3 grade levels at a time, like a kindergarten first, second, or second, third, fourth, or stagger concert time.
So you still couldn't get them all in what's being planned,
No,
correct?
no, but it's much better. At this point, I can't do even 1 grade level. So.
How big is the new auditorium? How many seats?
750.
That's the plan. And do you happen to know how many other communities this size have auditoriums that large?
So the question is, how many communities our size have 750 or approximately 750 seat auditoriums? It would be on the large side. I don't know of any that have quite that many, and that's what we have right now in the plan. Doesn't have to be 750 because we wanted to kind of shoot high as maximizing what we can do for some of the events that we have.
So I just heard a number of, there was 1,000 people that were going to be attending an event over Christmas, and it's only going to seat 750 people. Why would that be?
Well, the plan is to break up the programs into a little different format. So we would still be able to have a program for children, maybe 3 grade levels at a time, maybe 150 students participating.
So the 1,000 number is not really a number to consider. What is the number to consider?
We're thinking at this time 750. That's the number that we proposed as part of this project.
So,
I would assume that part of the problem right now is scheduling, right? Because you couldn't have the gym on 2 consecutive nights or a couple nights out of the week to split up those programs. So you kind of have to have it all at once. Whereas with this, you would have the option to split it up. Is that right?
That's correct, and I don't know, speaking for Amy, but even like the musical you do for 3 nights, you maybe wouldn't have to do it 3 nights, you could do it 2 nights, variety show 3 nights, just to accommodate. These side wings are difficult for any performance. If you're gonna put a riser on a stage, you'll be looking at the backs of the children.
Yeah, you can't see anything from the sides.
No,
That's happening center stage.
the sidelines are difficult to see.
I think maybe the question was, if you were to split it up, how many seats would you need? Like, if you did the 3, you'd need 500, if you did 2, you'd need 750, is that?
right.
Correct.
Exactly, thank you.
Is that where the 750 comes from, or?
Yeah, is that 3 grades for 750 or 4 grades?
3.
3 grades makes 750.
I don't know the number for sure. It's a well-attended event.
Yeah, I would
It's-
imagine even more people would come if we could split it up a little. I mean, the gym is packed.
Yeah.
We have family that, you know, don't come because we literally, you know, that's a great program. And the gym, we're capped out. We got it, you know, I mean, doing something different will be an improvement, you know, and it could allow much more attendance if we're able to split the show up.
Yeah, and I think the thing is trying to find a balance of not being so big that it's unrealistic financially to build, but not so small that you're not upgrading enough from this size. So would it be great to have an 1,000-seat auditorium? Yes, but we're already proposing a very big bond project, and we already said 750 is a little bit on the larger side for schools our size. So I think that's a good compromise to where you could do a couple nights of a big event like that. Or some of our, if you've been to some of our middle school Christmas time programs, or even the end of the year, the gym's very packed on those nights as well. And this would allow us to do those performances in a proper setting and have a facility that could seat what we expect that we would need for those performances.
So I guess one last question here. So it sounds like it needs to be big. Is there a well-documented reasoning for the size? Because a concern I guess I have is 750 even big enough? And why is 750 the number? Because it's like, well, there might be 1,000 people. So it's a large project. It's $33 million or more that's going to be spent. You two have both just said this is a very important thing for the kids to have this stage. There's going to be $33 million. It could be a huge stadium that's built for these kids. Is it important to have that money allocated somewhere else, or should we try to funnel some things into the stadium? Is it thought out well enough to where 750 is right? Is this the right number?
I feel confident, having taught here for 14 years, that size auditorium would more than sufficiently meet our needs.
Is
And that
there
we
a
could,
document that could be read for people to understand why that size has been selected?
I don't know that there's a document, but the architect that's designing it did the auditorium at Marion, which is a really nice facility if anybody's ever been to the auditorium there. And again, we feel like that number gives us a big enough space that we would not have any problems with it being too small. We could program around that, but big enough that it wouldn't restrict us.
Okay, yes, sir.
I have one question. What about with all the expansion, has parking been looked into? I'm curious, because at different events right here, finding a place to park gets quite interesting. So what you're proposing, somehow parking has also got to be taken into that equation, not?
Correct.
And is it?
Yes.
How?
Well, we're doing a traffic study So we're looking at facilities. Part of our work with our architect is deciding if we need to expand parking based on the facility changes, not only for parking, but also for drop-offs and those types of things. So it's just been a part of the conversation. We don't have that built into the actual bond project. We have a long-term capital outlay proposal that we're putting together as well. It would very likely fall into that category.
So that will be another additional cost that is going to be encountered, is that correct?
Potentially. We haven't determined that we do need to expand parking, but it's something that we want to be aware of. Okay, Mr. Bowerly's going to come up. Part of the proposal, if we were to build an additional fine arts center, would be to remodel and restructure the current fine arts pod. It would include moving our weight room facility, which is currently out at the stadium where Mr. Bowerly has to take his classes every day, into this space. He's going to talk a little bit about why that's part of the proposal.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Mr. Bauer, Tyson Bauer. I teach PE and health, and I coach high school football. I help coach middle school track, and I also run all of our high school and middle school summer training sessions that take place in the weight room. And one of the cool things about the new Fine Arts Center, as Mr. Proctor was talking about, was moving our weight room, which is my classroom. I have a health classroom near Mr. Dalston that has 9 walls, which is interesting. But my other classroom is the weight room. And 2 big differences between that classroom and everybody else's classroom is, 1, it's away from the building, and 2, it's used all year round. Just a little bit of background about how it's used. We offer 4 personal fitness classes during the school day for high school kids. We offer Champions Hour for grades 7 through 12, 3 times a week out there in the weight room. We have after-school sessions during the fall. We have after-school sessions during the winter. And then, like I said, our summer program that runs from the beginning of June to the end of July. We use that 46 weeks out of the year based on the calendar that I was looking at this morning. And so it gets used a lot. We have 2 issues, I guess, with the current weight room setup. One is the location. And then 2 is the space. I'll talk about the location first. Although I might say that there could be a few advantages to being away from the building at times, most of the time it is a distinct disadvantage of being outside of the building. I walked the other day from the weight room to the middle of the main gym. It took 2.5 minutes. You add that with the change time and going out there and coming back every single day, that's 5 minutes, around 5 minutes a day. I see my classes 4 times a week during the regular school week. Looking at our second semester calendar with our 4-day school weeks that we have and a couple snow days that we've had, I am missing 4.5 to 5.5 hours of classroom time during the second semester with the transition time of our kids coming back and forth in the building. And I feel like I could get a lot done in 4.5 hours of time in a semester. We could really utilize that time well. That time may be a little shorter the next 3 days because it's so cold. Our kids get out there pretty fast when it's cold, but they're walking out there when it's cold, when it's hot, when it's raining, when it's snowing. Maybe once a year we kind of stay in the gym if it's like really coming down and really awful. We'll do some things inside the gym, but it's kind of an issue of walking out there every single day. So the location was the first issue that we've had, and then the space is a good problem to have, but it's becoming an issue because our programs are growing like all of our programs here. We have added a personal fitness class. We used to have 3, now we have 4. Our summer programs is great. With the support of our administration and our sport coaches, we have kids all over the place in the summer, which is awesome. The recommended space for a weight room is 100 square foot per participant in there. And our main floor is about 2,500 square feet. We have a little cutout kind of on one part of the weight room underneath the stadium that has like the slanted wall where the stadium is, and that's really kind of unusable space, and plus it's out of my sight line. So that's about 350 square feet that we don't really use because we can't really do much in there. And so we have about 2,500 square feet in there that's usable. Our programs last year, in the summertime, we offer high school sessions for the males, high school sessions for the females. We separated the middle school sessions last year because it was so big, so we had males coming in separate from the females last year. And 3 of the 4 sessions last summer had over 25 easily. And so we're just running out of space, and I feel like I'm limited with some of the things that I can program because we are running out of space in that area. And then just to kind of wrap up with the issues, again, space and location are the issues, but the flooring is not really meant to be a weight room floor. That has adjusted my programming during season, especially. We don't do a lot of jump and landing training as much as we would if we had a better floor, so we're not just constantly pounding the legs of our athletes and kids that are in those classes. And I don't know what Les has done this year, but he's worked magic with the heater because this year, thankfully, this is the first year that the heater has kept up. And it's awesome. Like, yeah, knock on wood. Oh man, I'm gonna show up tomorrow, it's gonna be bad. There's been times where I walk in there in the morning and it's like 45 degrees in the weight room. And I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be a cold one today. But yeah, so those are the limitations that we have in my classroom, which is the weight room, again, used all year round. A lot of kids use it. And I would encourage you to take a look. I'll be out there after this tonight. Many of you have kind of looked in the windows maybe, but you've never really walked through it. I kind of imagined, 25 to 46 kids in there at a time, and seeing how we manage those spaces. So, any questions?
What's the new proposed size?
3,700-ish. And it would be somewhere in this area.
So that puts you at 35 to 37 people that you could have in there at one time?
Right. All right, thank you.
I do have a question going back, not for him, but going back to the parking. I just kind of missed out on that a little bit. Does this bond entail more parking?
No.
This bond does not entail more parking. This room we're sitting in here seats 250 people, I would guess. I don't know that exactly. I'm just giving a rough estimate. That gentleman said, it's hard to find parking when we're getting 250 people in this room. Now, that new building is going to have 750 seats in it. Where are they going to find parking? Are we looking at 1,000 people, 750 people? Are we going to have parking? How well thought out is this project?
So our plan includes not only a bond proposal, but also a long-term capital outlay plan. And that's, there's some information on our website on our capital outlay planning and our budget. And you can see kind of over time how our board has committed to increasing the balances that we carry there. So we feel like we're in a really good position to not only address needs with the bond project, but also address ongoing needs that are separate from the bond project through our capital outlay funds. So as part of that plan, we've got a lot of components that fall into that 10-year capital outlay plan overview that would include things that we're not able to address immediately in bond, and parking would be one of those items. Okay, as we put information out about the bond project, one of the fundamental reasons that we wanted to have a lot of these sessions was to speak to a pretty significant change in how we would configure grade levels in each building. As I'm sure you're aware, the proposal would have 5th through 8th graders in the same building as 9th through 12th graders. And as we've talked through that, even as a committee, there's been a lot of folks who share concerns about having young kids and older kids together in one building, and what will that look like. So we have a group of folks. I'm going to have not only you guys come on up, but we have some teachers and administrators that are going to speak to that, and we're going to have 3 of our high school students kind of share their perspective. on what they think that can look like from a high school perspective, and some of the ways that we already do it too. So you guys come on up, and then Mr. Rhodes, Mr. Heinrichs, Mr. Ruerts, Mr. Graverson, I think you're back up, if you'll come back to.
Hey guys, my name is Max Werner, and I'm a senior here at Hesston High, and I'm here along with Katie and Jace, and we're pretty much just going to speak on our high school experience, on what our thoughts and our input is with what a school would be like with middle schoolers and high schoolers, 5th through 12th grade. So my day-to-day life, I actually get to experience a lot of time and experiences with middle schoolers. I am a 3-sport athlete, so in the fall during football season, we actually, as high school football players, practice on the same field as middle school football players. Now we're not doing hitting drills with them, you don't have 18-year-old kids smacking 7th graders and everything like that. I actually do find practices on the same field as middle schoolers pretty beneficial. Being middle schoolers, they get to look up to their idols and see some dudes making plays, and you get to be sitting at the point where you're like, man, I want to be like that guy. And being a high schooler, you also get to look down on those kids, and you actually get some coaching opportunities. You get to see those little middle schoolers, those 7th and 8th graders, really putting in work and trying to get noticed. And you can definitely make their day by pointing them out and giving them some coaching lessons. Now in basketball, we actually don't practice with them in basketball, but I do see those middle schoolers showing at every single game, every single home game, even some away games, and they will really support, and they do a very good job cheering for us and really supporting us. I will get questions every single day. I see those middle schoolers, hey, you're going to dunk tonight, Max? You got to get a dunk down, Max. I said, maybe, guys. But no, the respect is very mutual between high schoolers and middle schoolers when it comes to sports and their support. And same with track. I'm also a track athlete. And last year, we would run on the same track as them. We wouldn't do the same workouts, just like football. But you still get that chance to notice those middle schoolers working. And those middle schoolers also get to notice you and see all the work you're doing, and you kind of become an idol to those middle schoolers. So those are the extracurricular activities that kind of go on. I also go to the middle school about once a day, depending on my schedule. I'm a student aide for Mrs. Ferralis, the PE teacher at the middle school. So some aides have to kind of make copies, do a lot of paperwork. I'm probably the luckiest aide in the world because I get to play PE games with the little kids at the end of my day. So I'll drive over to the middle school and play with them, so I get a lot of experience with them. I'll also go to the middle school once a week-ish to go help Mrs. Taves. I'll talk to some students, some 6th graders, and kind of do whatever she needs for at the middle school. So I do go to the middle school very often, and I talk to those kids a lot. And my general takeaway from all of the interactions I personally have with middle schoolers is very positive. I think that middle schoolers look up to high schoolers a lot. They find them as idols. And me being a high schooler, I like to talk to those kids and sit back and reminisce and kind of think about, oh wow, I remember when I was a 6th grader. And I like to kind of, I feel a little sympathetic for kind of what they go through and all that stuff. So that's pretty much all I have to touch on. I'll pass it on to Katie and see what she has to say.
Hi everyone, like Max says, I'm Katie. I think a lot of the concern with the middle school and high school being together, people don't realize that already happens all the time. I mean, I see middle schoolers every day and interact with them. One of the main ways I interacted with high schoolers when I was in middle school is on the bus. I rode the bus every single day, and every single day there's 3 to 4 high schoolers that rode it with me. And on a bus where there's not a lot of supervision, you might expect them to be rowdy or rude or inappropriate. But those high schoolers were actually great to me. They would ask me about my day every day. They wanted to know what middle school was like, if it was the same. It was always a positive interaction. And I kind of learned how to be a role model for them. Like, that's how you interact with younger kids. You're nice to them. So now as a high schooler, I see that a lot, not only in myself, but the other high schoolers around me. Like Max said, we see them a lot at the games, or Max goes over to the middle school and aides. And everybody's always a positive role model. And I think Hesston High School especially, and Hesston Middle School really teach us how to do that. Some of you might not be aware, but every single 8th grader gets a little 5th grade buddy that they mentor and they take around the middle school. And through that, they kind of learn how to be a role model, how to be a mentor to younger kids. So once you get to high school, you already have all of the skills you need to be a positive influence. And also something interesting with the buddy system is, like, for example, right now our current sophomores all know a 7th grader. So if those middle schoolers were in the high school with us, they would already know some of those high schoolers. And in my experience, I don't think a high schooler would ever be mean to a middle schooler. I think if they're going to interact with them, they would go out of their way to say hi and just try to be a positive influence, because that's what Hesston has taught us.
All right, my name is Jace Regier. I'll speak a little bit about golf season and the golf team and mixing middle school and high school, kind of like Max talked about with football. So every year we start, I think middle school got the golf team like 2 or 3 years ago, and they, at the beginning of the season, they're mixed. And so middle school's on one side, the golf team, or the high school golf team's on the range, and the middle school's on the putting green. So, and then towards the end of the season, we get to see middle school and high school kids play together. So maybe Grady Pauls will send us out. So it's 3 varsity players and maybe 1 middle school player. That 1 middle school player may be super frightened, but it's actually a great leadership opportunity for the high schoolers to be able to get to play with them. Obviously that middle schooler looks up to the 3 high schoolers a lot. So leadership and mentorship, I think that's kind of what this is all about as far as mixing the 2 schools together. It would provide a incredible amount of leadership opportunities and opportunities for mentorship. Maybe that's even pairing a senior with a freshman, just like 8th graders pair with 5th graders. So there's a lot of opportunities there. But also from a middle school level, I interacted a lot with high school students when I was in middle school and taking some of those morning weight classes like Champions Hour, like Mr. Bowerly talked about. So that's a little bit about that. But then I thought I'd share a quick story about the other day. We were just finishing up class, and Mrs. Gaston, the AB teacher, she's hosting a kind of an SSN intro course for the middle school students. And when the middle school students were coming in at the end of class, they had about a 10-minute overlay with the high school students while we were editing videos, pictures, whatever we were doing. And they were super interested in what we were doing, so we kind of mentored them just for that quick 10 minutes of overlay. And it was really cool to see that. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks guys. Mr. Heinrichs and I will talk a little bit kind of specifically here about, well, we want to click that and it'll just pop up kind of a list of topics maybe for us. There with that. I know at least what's been expressed to me is a lot of concern about the idea of 5 through 12 being in the same building together. So that's what we want to try to address here as a group a little bit. Well, I'll let you start here since your name's first, but that's the topic we want to hit specifically on this. So some of your parents in the room too that maybe have kids that are of that age or about to be of that age too. I will say for me here, please ask your question about that topic too, because I don't want somebody to walk out of here because I didn't maybe give the right information for you about that. I'd rather you ask your question so we can answer that as directly as we possibly can and give you the best information you have walking out of here too.
You've already heard from me tonight, so I'll try to keep this one relatively short. But I did want to share a little here because I'm one of only a handful of teachers that teaches 5th grade through 12th grade every single day. With my position, I work with that whole age range every single day. And I'm going to paint with a really broad brush here, knowing that there's kids that are different than the norm to this. But when I really kind of look back at that whole age range that I teach every day, the 5th and 6th graders definitely have a little bit of a younger mentality. And then you kind of have this age range, and if there's anybody that fits in this age range in here, please don't be offended by what I'm about to say, and I'm sure it doesn't apply to you personally. There's kind of an age range between like 7th grade and 9th grade, where there's this recognition that I'm not a little kid anymore, but maybe I feel like I'm a little older than I actually am, and maybe my maturity level and my decision making doesn't quite line up with what I think. And so that's the age range where I think sometimes even good kids maybe just do some dumb things sometimes. And then what I see then is as they progress, sophomore, junior, seniors, you really see them really mature into young adults. And I think you saw some examples up here today of that. And so I know if you're a parent of a little one that hasn't had the older kids, that the thought of the juniors and seniors are like these big scary kids because they stare at you eye to eye. But those are the best leaders that we have. And I don't want to steal the thunder of anybody else that's going to talk, but the district, specifically the middle school, has designed that buddy program in a way that has made our 8th graders great leaders and role models for the 5th graders. And as somebody that works with 5th through 12, I'm here to tell you, if they can turn 8th graders into great leaders and positive role models, it's limitless what you can do with juniors and seniors who are even more mature and more experienced and have developed their talents even more. So we're not talking about something that we haven't proven we can do. I mean, other districts come and look at our system of 5th through 8th and how they do that leadership. And I'm here to tell you, somebody that works with that age range, that if they can turn that into a positive experience and not have the 5th graders traumatized by scary kids, the high school's not a concern for me at all, as somebody that works with that age range every day.
I have a question. You mentioned there's sort of a natural transition, somewhere between 7th to 9th grade, but you're basically advocating that there should be a kind of an agglomeration or a collection. There really should not be a physical transition as well. You should get rid of that physical transition, and you should just combine them all into the same building. So basically what you're saying is there is some sort of a biological transition going on, but what you're saying is let's get rid of the building. Is that what you're advocating?
Well, what I'm saying is, I am saying that I understand a parent's fear of the biggest kids, because when they look at their little kid, that seems like the most intimidating difference. And what I see developmentally is that the oldest students are not students that parents need to be typically concerned about their students. Like, our seniors make good choices for the most part, and I think our 8th graders do too, but if I was gonna guess one age group to do something kind of off the wall and unexpected, I would expect that more from an 8th grader who the 5th graders are already in a building with now than I would expect that from our juniors and seniors. So, listen, if you wanted to try and you'd end up with 12 different buildings if you were trying to do a different building for every step of child development, but I feel like while it's a natural concern of parents of younger kids, I think when you work with those kids every day, you see that it could absolutely be set up in a way that was positive for all the age levels.
So I guess just follow up. You said you can kind of see that you would want to separate those up into individual at each grade. Like you're saying that would be a good idea. So Shume Soon and colleagues in 2002 published a study in Pediatrics about the national estimate of the timing of sexual maturation and racial differences among U.S. children. Has the board or any of the people that have advocated tonight read that article or any related articles? Has the board considered maturation and their plans for grouping children with young adults in the same building envelope?
I'll take a crack at it. Okay. I don't know who the people are you just said. I'll be honest with you.
It's one of many articles.
Yeah, I'm sure. I just don't know those particular authors of that article. So I know there's a number of those articles out there and research that are related to that. And I think that Mr. Heinrichs and I will probably speak specifically to this, but we want to operate a building that provides proper supervision for students too. And we think that's really important in how we operate on a daily basis. That is different for high school students than it is for middle school students. Okay? And I had this conversation with some people just a little bit earlier today too. We can't treat these three the same way with the same rules that we provide for 5th graders. You can't do that. There is a level of looseness and tightness that we've got to try to balance at a high school level. where we've got to provide freedoms for our high school students that we don't need to provide and shouldn't provide for our middle school students, based on maturity. Whether that's physical maturity, emotional maturity, social maturity, let's just house it under maturity, I suppose, with that. And we've got to strike that balance with high school kids on that tight and loose, give them some freedoms, have some place where we say, here's boundary on that. And I think that's really important as we talk about 5 through 12 as well. We'll try to address that some, but please ask those specific questions. Parents that got kids coming too, about how you're going to handle this, you know, if you got a specific scenario you're thinking of. But yeah, so I think that's certainly the responsibility of the adults in the school to account for that supervision for kids too, whether we have to do with sexual maturity, emotional maturity, whatever that is, with that too. So thanks for the question.
Well, I just follow up on that. You say there's a looseness for high school students and a tightness for middle school students. Same as the other gentleman, you kind of define that there's a boundary in a way. So I don't know, why do you think that it's right to combine it when there's a boundary, an obvious boundary that both of you just previously discussed?
So I won't use that. We might talk about that a little bit more on what we're going to talk about, but holler at me. I think that would be a thing. Talk to me specifically afterwards too.
Oh, no, I'm interested in having everyone in the community be aware.
Okay.
And I'll speak to that. I think I can respond to that.
Can I throw out one thing real quick? I think it's important to notice that the proposed plan is 2 separate wings. The kids aren't going to be going to class right next to each other.
Yeah, we'll talk about
They're
that.
purposely
Yeah.
split
Yeah.
for that reason. So that, I'm sure you'll bring that up, but that
Yeah.
was make sure that is.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Diller. Yeah, and I'm not familiar with that literature that you cited or that. I'm going to respond the way I think you meant that question, and maybe I have that wrong, I don't know, but I think it's probably pretty commonly understood that there's a phase of life, and I think we could generally say 7th and 8th and 9th grade. Lyle kind of spoke to that. Like, it's just a weird time, right? You know, we all kind of went through that, and maybe it doesn't start exactly in 7th grade for everybody, and maybe it doesn't end exactly at the end of 9th grade for everybody, but somewhere in there, things are changing in all sorts of different ways, and it causes just that to be a weird time. I think that's commonly understood. For me, if we know that to be true, it seems like it would be a really beneficial thing for kids in that phase of life to connect them with people like this that have been through that phase of life, have kind of come out the other side, and are doing just remarkable things. I mean, you listen to them, it's just amazing to listen to them, you know? I see them maybe a little bit more behind the scenes, and we all see Katie and Max on the basketball court and athletic fields and things like that. They are amazing people. Right now, we are missing some opportunities to be able to connect incredible juniors and seniors in high school with kids who are in that phase of life that's a little bit weird, but they could probably use some support. Like, we need to connect them in ways. We don't need to separate them. Now, in saying that, is supervision going to be really important? You bet. Yeah, you bet. There's some times when we're going to have to use some common sense on how we supervise middle school kids and high school kids. We'll take care of that. But I think the proposal with this bond project actually allows us to maximize some opportunities that would be awesome for middle school kids in that weird time of life. And I'm going to sound like a fuddy-duddy on this. It's awesome for you guys too. And you kind of spoke to that. You're at a mature level and you kind of get that too. The things that you're learning from those opportunities that you've had with middle school kids, it's hard to quantify, it's hard to put a dollar figure on that, but those are amazing opportunities that will last with whatever you end up doing in life, you know, to help you be more successful in that. So that's my response to that. I think we need to actually connect kids in ways that we struggle with right now. We do at times. I think Lyle maybe spoke, or no, Max spoke too. Football practices, I'll tell you, cross-country practices are together. Lyle gets 8th graders up to play in the pep band. So we do try to connect kids when we can. We're just limited. And this project would allow us probably to maximize some of those things. My mind, I'm not smart enough to know all of those connections. I think some of those things will just happen over time if the bond project passes. But at least we have some opportunities to think about some of those things where right now it's like, yeah, We just can't do that because the high school's over there and we're over here and we just can't quite connect on that. I'm not sure if you want to go from that.
Yeah, so for those of you that might not know who I am, I'm Shannon Ruertz. I'm a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher, and this is my 21st year in the district. This was my first teaching job out of college, and I've got 3 kids that are currently attending school here as well, and I've got 2 buildings. I got 2 in the middle school, 1 in the high school. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of information on staff perspective from the middle school. And obviously, over the last year, this project has had a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion, and has come full circle multiple times. And when our steering committee kind of settled in on this idea or concept of a 512 building and putting up 2 wings with the current 5th through 8th grade middle school coming over here. I can honestly tell you, and I'm going to speak for my middle school staff right now, we were super excited about that opportunity. I think there's some things that, in terms of opportunities, that it presents itself for the future. And some of those things might incorporate some programs or some potential classes that we really haven't probably even thought of yet at this point in time. Also with just being able to combine some spaces between the high school and middle school, create some more resources that would be available for middle school students along with space. Our RS program that we have at the middle school, our advisory group that we meet every day, first thing in the morning, we're already having, I can already hear little bits of conversations about what some of the potential benefits of that could be, moving into a facility where we might have more access to our high school kids. And I know these 3 down here talked a little bit about the mentorship that our 8th graders do. And we actually start a little bit of that in 7th grade with some leadership training, and that's when they find out who their buddies are in 4th grade, and we start making those connections during the spring semester. And I think there's some opportunities where our high school kids might be able to assist. Even amongst our middle school RS program, the way it's currently set up. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there as we move forward. And then a couple of other things that I thought of as we were putting this information together. I think it could create some enhanced collaboration between middle school and high school staff, just because we would be in proximity to each other. I'm going to use a term or a quote that Greg used this morning when we were talking in his office. You know, our distance between our 2 buildings is, what, 200 meters or whatever it might be. Close enough
Only
to
a
that.
track person would be.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. We're a meter school. So 200 meters, it just as well be 2,000 miles when it comes to things like collaboration with our middle school kids and our high school kids, or our middle school staff and our high school staff. Just because we're on different schedules, we don't see each other at all throughout the day, and if we're under kind of the same roof, then that could present some really cool opportunities educationally for us that we just haven't had recently. Does anybody have any questions related to that?
With the efficiencies you've talked about between middle school and high school, is there a potential maybe cost-saving efforts in terms of reduction in staff, maybe administrative staff, having it all in one building? Have you looked at that?
That's probably a conversation for our administrators. I know that there has been some conversation on efficiencies, but in terms of staff, I would say that's a no.
Mr. Rhodes, Mr. Heinrichs, you guys talked about supervision and some of that, especially with the various age ranges. Do you feel like you have pretty good plans for like pick up and drop off those times in the day that are a little tougher to supervise, and not everyone has a set place they need to be, and maybe also lunch, before and after lunch get a little flexible. Can you guys speak to those times where, at least for me, 5th grade daughter, coming up, I'm a little nervous about those particular times.
Sure.
I'm not so nervous when they're in the classroom in
Yep.
a very supervised setting, right? So could you speak to
Yeah, really good question there, and actually that's a question that we've received a lot from the start of this. Even internally, we've had a lot of conversations around that, so thanks for bringing that up. Our current plan, and it's just a concept right now, but the current plan, if you look at the kind of the design of the building, would have separate drop-off points, a middle school drop-off point, and then the current front doors, although that would maybe look a little bit different, maybe a little bit expanded, that would be where high school kids are coming in. For me personally, that's less, the reason for doing that is less about keeping kids separate. It's just the efficiency of getting a lot of kids into a building kind of all at the same time. We've even kind of thrown out the idea of maybe a different starting times for the middle school compared to the high school. That would reduce, just the traffic flow at one time. Mr. Proctor or Mr. Rhodes, I think maybe you said it to me. I don't know if you've broken the news to high school kids of maybe having all high school kids park, in the football field parking lot, which would further reduce, just make it a little bit easier for middle school parents to get through the parking lot and drop kids off. So we think, we've had some good conversations about that. I couldn't tell you exactly what that plan looks like at this point, but we're aware of that, we're accounting for that and starting to have some conversations about that. I think you mentioned the cafeteria as well. You're all familiar, you walked by it, kind of this little half wall, I guess I'll call it, around our current high school cafeteria where the trophies are, or at least the trophies there at the front of it. We want to push that out, take those out, and then you gain all that space, from the cafeteria to where like the auditorium would start. That's a pretty good amount of space right there. We think that would allow us to have maybe separate areas for high school kids and middle school kids. Maybe it's in the same general area, but there would be distinct spots, for high school kids to eat compared to middle school kids. That's one way to think about it, and I think that's a very functional sort of thing. I'll tell you, I'm a parent. I'm one of those parents with a kid in every building. I always heard about parents like that, and now I'm one of those parents. When I think about the opportunity, and I'll go back to my sermon about Max and Katie and Jace from earlier, when I think about my own daughter or son, kindergarten son, which I know this doesn't involve elementary school, but just go with me, them eating lunch close to high school kids, I think that's pretty cool, It would be supervised, it'd be purposeful and intentional, but those things are pretty neat. I think those could be good opportunities. I don't know where, I'm not saying that that's going to be what happens, but I think we can look at this as, let's put those opportunities out there, and if we supervise them the right way, and everybody's set up for that to be really productive, I think those are pretty cool opportunities.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Could you share a little bit more? You mentioned there would be some intentional scheduling, and I know there's been some real thought about that. Mr. Heinrichs or Mr. Rhodes, could you share a little bit about what that would look like? Because that would be intentional, is my understanding, for the classroom.
Yeah, and maybe, can I go a little bit broader in my answer to that too? If you think about the concept here of two separate wings, a high school wing and a middle school wing, both would be 2 stories, separated by the media center or the library. That's a pretty big division between the 2 buildings. And that was intentional because we know there are vast parts of the day when we want high school kids to be with high school kids and middle school kids to be with middle school kids. So just the location, the design of the building, there's been some thought put into the separation that we desire at times. Megan mentioned the scheduling. We know that the middle school schedule and the high school schedule need to jive with each other. For middle school kids to maybe take advantage of some opportunities that we don't currently have, our schedule is going to have to work, but we also know that our schedule needs to further that separation too at times too. So I couldn't give you right now, here's what the middle school schedule is going to be, but we would account for, are there times when we want kids to be together, are there times when we want kids to be apart when it comes to that. I think the other part of that answer for me is just supervision. And if you would come, the middle school is just 4 grades. It's a 5A building, obviously. I think we could use that as a model for the kinds of things that we might want to implement in terms of how you separate kids at certain times. This year we have 286 kids at the middle school. The very first thing of the day is RS. Some of you are familiar with that. That's a time of the day when we have 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders together for 20-25 minutes. From that point on, so that's about 8:30, after RS ends, 99% of the day, 5th and 6th graders do not see 7th and 8th graders, and vice versa. 7th and 8th graders just do not see 5th and 6th graders. It might be just a little stretch if Mrs. Frawless is taking PE kids outside and it's during a change of 7th and 8th. There's one little stretch of the day where that kind of happens, but again, it's very rare for that to happen. Those are all intentionally planned to do it that way because we know there are times when we want to maximize opportunities for kids to be together, and then there's times when we don't want that. We want separation between grade levels too. So we actually have a pretty good model right now at the middle school, and I think that approach we would take and apply with how we have basically 2 buildings under one roof, if that makes sense.
I'll maybe try to touch on both those things. Those are kind of some topics that they were up there on the screen. But just kind of, I guess I'll house that under logistical kind of things. There's those times that are, would be perceived as unstructured, like outside of the classroom time, not directly in the classroom. Pick up and drop off. Lunchtime, bus passing periods, and potentially some lag time between school and activities. And I may be missing something there. If you got a question specific on another one that you're thinking of, ask me on that too. A thing to keep in mind with that blueprint is it gives the idea of 2 wings with that, a middle school wing and a high school wing. And there's not a lot of other detail drilled into that yet. So it doesn't say specifically where bathrooms are. Okay, and some folks, parents, you're kind of going like, a 10-year-old going to the bathroom with a 17-year-old, because that's going to not feel right too, So that's not drilled into there yet, but we would have very clear kind of separation. In the middle school wing, there's going to be middle school bathrooms, and very well could be the way it's going to be set up. There's going to be 5th and 6th grade bathrooms, 7th and 8th grade bathrooms. In the high school wing, there's going to be high school bathrooms, and there's not going to be crossover and those types of things. It doesn't, yeah, I'll talk about locker rooms too, yeah. It doesn't specifically show, hey, here's the exact second entrance. So that's not listed on the blueprint right there, but we know that we need to have a different, probably entry exit point at the end of the day for kids too, So where exactly that will fall on there will have a little bit to do with our traffic flow, how we get kids in and out of the building. I can tell you just from my experience every day, so a lot of you drop off kids to the schools. I don't always get that opportunity with my own kids because I'm coming here, in the morning. When I do, Mrs. Crable and Mrs. Lafferty are always outside, right? Mr. Heinrichs is always outside. High school world gets our schedule's a little bit different. There's some days I'm not outside, or I am outside, or I stand inside this door right here. The most docile children coming to school are high school kids, because they woke up at 7:48, to get there at 8:59 with that too. So with our high school, honestly, our high school kids coming to school, it's so it's tame. It's just super tame. Now, the question people are saying, but you got a lot of high school kids driving. You know, and I think that's where we're going to have to be thoughtful too on where that parking is. Somebody destroyed it for the high school kids. These guys don't care where people are going to have to park in the future, but that may affect some kids on where we ask high school kids to park versus middle school parking. Entry and exits, we've got 2 of those as well, and how we're going to structure kind of that traffic flow I think is important as well, so people can get in and out. If you drop kids off at the middle school, you know the challenge of trying to get through that front entrance right there. We certainly have better opportunity coming up the drive here at the high school to get kids dropped off and not be backed up onto Ridge Road. Well, locker rooms, yeah. So in that too is, you know, we've got students, we've got locker rooms in our auxiliary gym, we've got locker rooms in our main gym. Somewhere in this, whether it's maybe somewhere carved out of this pod, if there's another gym that's built on there, we'll have to have some more locker rooms as well. We absolutely don't want middle school students and high school students sharing locker rooms. Okay, so I know we've got middle school and high school football coaches in here. There's a high school locker room and there's a middle school locker room over there. And I'm guessing they would both agree it's probably right to do that, to have those guys separated in that way for a number of reasons. And so, yeah, those would be things that we definitely want to have separated as well and account for. In that. The lunch part of that as well, Greg talked about kind of expanding the space. We'll need to do that. That could even, has been talked about a little bit, moving in this direction a little bit as well. We do need more space out there if we're going to house more kids in our building as well. And again, that's a time where lunch is looser than classroom time. But we provide supervision. Administrators are out there. We have a couple teachers, middle school does that as well with a couple teachers on that too. As far as schedule goes, we operate on 2 very different schedules. Our bell schedules are different, and if you've had kids go through, you know, you're aware of what that is. I don't know that we're going to be able to say, hey, we're going to use the exact same schedule. I'll answer. Yeah, let me finish that thought on her schedule right there, and I'll answer your question there. I don't know that we'll be able to say, hey, we're going to be on the exact same schedule. I don't know if that serves the purpose well for 5 through 12 with that, but part of that scheduling is then those passing period times. So passing period, kind of a loose time, you know, kids flowing through the hallways. Well, is my middle school kid going to be walking through a big group of high school kids to get their next class? And that's where it's really important to distinguish those wings are a really important big part of this as well, that defines space. It makes it very, I can tell you right now, if you've walked through the classroom spaces, you know you can't see any further than about 30 feet. And somebody was joking with me, okay, at the library, the wall's about this high, so I can see over it. Not everybody can. I can see a little ways across there, you know, but from a safety supervision standpoint, being able to see 100 feet or whatever the length of the hallway is there that's a good thing for us at any level, I would say with that. Yes, sir?
Okay, so I'm kind of going back to his question about his 5th grade daughter. And he's not the only one with a 5th grade daughter. And I'm a little bit kind of thrown off here. The guy, I mean, I think he may have specifically asked about lunch. Maybe not, but having lunch with a 5th grade daughter and, you know, a senior, right? And I just want to say, these distinguished seniors here are distinguished, and they're here today because they are distinguished. They're set apart. They are some of the more defining seniors that are going to be graduating this year, and I hope that they do well. I hope that they do very well, but they've been chosen, they've been selected because they are distinguished. They are different. You didn't go and choose the senior that doesn't strive to be great. These seniors strive to be great. And those are the people that you want to interact with your students. Now, he asked, really his question, how do we know that my 5th grade daughter is going to be okay? The guy answered his question, I'm baffled. He said, I think it would be great if my daughter was having lunch, middle school was having lunch with a high schooler. I mean, his response to him is basically, you don't need to worry about anything. How could that be? And then you just said, lunch is a little bit looser. I mean, you're both, I don't know that either of you have really quarreled, or that you've really settled the question. You really answered the question. I mean, it's a 5th grade daughter. There's lots of 5th grade daughters in there school. These are your distinguished. If you want your distinguished seniors, your distinguished juniors and seniors to be in with your younger kids, why not set up a program for them individually, like a PALS program, to have them go out? Why must you put them into the same building with these loose things and have everybody be together? You've selected these seniors here. You didn't say, whoever seniors come and give a speech tonight. You said, I'm going to select 1, 2, and 3 seniors to come and talk tonight. You do that for us, but you won't do it for the children. Gotta get to sleep and go to work tomorrow. Y'all have a good evening.
I want to respond to that question. Okay. Hey, sir, if you would hang on just a second, because I kind of want to respond to that just a little bit about these 3 seniors here. Well, just hear me out for 1 second. Here's what I can tell you. I've been here for 21 years. I know Mark's been here for a long time. Lyle's been here a long time. And as teachers, we've had every student in the senior class. Every student. And I can tell you, without a doubt, 100%, that we could have picked probably any senior to come and talk.
But you did.
But here's the deal. But your comment right there just degraded some of our senior class. And I'm telling you right now, we have an awesome, awesome student body. Awesome student body.
Mr. Rivers is right, by the way. And these 3 are really good, too. So sorry, as we can back there. Well, I could. There's people on the video too, so I think it picks that up too. But I could. I was a basketball coach. Yeah. So, yeah. So we've kind of got a list of those things up there. And AJ, I don't know if you need more information on the lunch right there too. I do think.
I was just kind of curious your thoughts. I mean,
yeah.
I know most of you guys are really good in school, but you know, I kind of caused a little trouble before and after school during those times where supervision maybe wasn't as good, and so just a little bit of a concern from personal experience.
I know the 16-year-old you, I think, AJ, with that too.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, are there other districts of similar size that have implemented a 512 building? And if so, have you reached out to them to see if there's any unique challenges that we haven't thought of?
Yeah, there's a number of them in our size range. There would be some configuration 512. There's a 412, 512, 612, 712. You'd see a lot of different age range configurations, and for a lot of different reasons on that too. That might be a sign. I know Mr. Proctor has talked about that a little bit. I can't say I've talked with a bunch of those schools. I think he has a little bit. So at some point he might share some directly to that kind of topic too. Yeah, I think that's there's some good models out there for that as well. So. Yeah, within our list up there, relationships was the first point. We kind of skipped down to some other logistical things there. I can tell you, so at the middle school level, and I don't want to speak for the middle school, but the RS program is huge. That's probably what Greg was going to talk about, and our staff were going to talk about with the middle school level. I'll tell you, things change certainly for kids when they get to the high school level. If you've had kids grow up, you know that. Too, and we have a pretty robust activities program for a school our size. We have a lot of different activities, and that's not just sports. As a matter of fact, if I could just plug something too, for 20 years I've been in Hesston, I think, and I often hear, well, in Hesston you got to play a sport, or just you can't be involved in it. And I will tell you, from a numbers standpoint, our biggest student programs every year are music, and if we took like let's say a 5-year average over time of all these different programs, music, FBLA, which is Future Business Leaders of America, robotics would probably be our 3 biggest. Those are not sport programs too. So a lot of what we're talking about here is addressing some of those activity programs too that we feel like are really strong for us, that we want to continue to grow. And we want to try to match some facilities to what we want to, the opportunities that we want to provide kids with that as well. Yeah, and I think that's where in high school where they've got a pretty scripted RS program. With scripted, I say, like really purposeful buddy system. High school kids get there and they start choosing different activities. They get involved in different things. And we got kids that are football players and also come at 7:15 a.m. for singers. You know, and that's awesome that we have kids that are interested in such a variety of things with that too. And I think that's a distinguishing point for us at the high school, where that relationship part starts to change a little bit, of where these guys were freshmen going into sports practices with seniors, where like when you're in middle school, it's just the 7th and 8th graders together. And I could say that across the board for all of our activities too. And I think that's a really critical component of the high school experience, is the activities program. And not just sports. Sports are too. I was a sports guy.
Hey Ty, Lyle said something about the shop when we were talking and what we're adding. Can you speak to like what the improvements are or what we're adding with the shop, and if that comes with any other organizations or anything like that?
Yeah. So in that was talking about the pod. I'd be pointing right at it right now. The pit stop is in there. Some of you went to school here a number of years ago. That where the pit stop was part of the shop a number of years ago. Yeah, I see some heads nodding, so I think I was right there. And our robotics room and shop are kind of one, I won't say one big space. They're separated by some walls there, but our wood shop is pretty small. I was in there with a few people tonight. We would like to expand that space for some hands-on kind of programs there. Now, if I could say, like that definitely means we're definitely adding welding, or we're definitely adding auto mechanics. It would be hard to say that right this second on that specific program with that too, but we know that for us to expand an opportunity, like you have to have space to have those opportunities with that, straight out, you know. And then there's a component of that too, where that robotics room, if you've been in our robotics room, it started as one classroom. So we started that 10 years ago, started with 8 kids, next year had 20 kids, next year had 30 kids. I'm not making up numbers. Next year had 40 kids. We eventually, eventually we were like close to 60 kids. We're a school of 260. We were close to 60 in robotics at one time too. A little too much, maybe so. But we just outgrew the space, so we knocked a hole in the wall, put in a double door so that could just be opened up into another room there with that. It's a little funky in how we run that. So we want to be able to move the robotics room. That's part of that. Expanding that pod is moving the robotics room into a classroom that would be in the new wing. To be able to open up that space a little bit more, create a bigger shop area. And that would also move our pit stop, which many of you have been in. We would want to move that space, kind of keep it in that pod area so it's convenient for games, so move that. Have you ever tried to go in and out of the pit stop during a basketball game? It's not good. Going through that door that was not built for that purpose. You know, you get the breaker boxes and that little passageway right there. And so moving that space over a little bit and having a little bigger access into that space as well. So yeah, at a base level, we need more space right now for a wood shop and a robotics room, just right now, you know. And by creating more space, hopefully we can continue to, you know, we've added programs over the last 10 years and hopefully could continue to add some offerings through that too, yeah.
Are there any like vocational skill, technical skills like that going to be offered at any point, FFA, anything of that sort?
Yeah, so here's, let me answer a little bit from a historical perspective and kind of where that could possibly go with that. Again, I've been here for 20 years, and when I first came to Hesston, our FFA program was with Mountain Ridge. For whatever reason, that kind of ceased to be the case with that. We partnered with Newton on that. A challenge is the Brooks Trade Center, which is 6 miles down the road, and I don't know how many of you have been to that facility. They partner with Hutch Community College, and they offer a lot of those programs there. So a lot of the schools our size are partnering with Newton, not necessarily just for FFA, but auto mechanics, welding, a number of other programs there, because of the challenge of, there's a challenge in staffing those, and that's just a consideration on that too. That's really hard right now. It's getting harder, unfortunately too. So if I could say, if I just could wave a magic wand, so I don't know if I should say these kind of statements in this type of form, but if I could wave a magic wand, everybody could entertain me on that a little bit. I would love to have welding, you know, because that's just such a tangible skill set that a kid right away goes and gets a job with, you know. It would be great to add, you mentioned directly FFA too, And, you know, I think that's a conversation we got to continue to have for our district too on that.
Plumbing and electrical and things like
Yeah.
that also offered through all those vocational.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Those are needed.
Yeah, and that's where I agree with you like 1,000% on that. For how hosting in-house versus the trade-off of 6 miles down the road of Brooks Trail, that's where a challenge comes in of what do you host and what do you partner with somebody with, honestly, with that. Yeah.
Just for time purposes, we've got one more group that's going to present. Jim and Megan and Jerry, if you guys want to come on up. These three have been a part of our facility steering committee that's been an ongoing group for months now, and they're going to share a little bit about their perspective from the committee and just their perspective on the bond project.
I'm not going to talk real long because you've heard more from the people more involved. I'm going to just say a little bit on my steering committee experience. We got a phenomenal district. They started this process, I think, like 15 months ago, and I'm involved in a different building project just starting. And you start with the people that live it, who do it, and see what they need versus a community stepping up and saying, this is what you need. And so it's pretty interesting to get involved with the steering committee when they've already been talking and listening to how well thought out it was. I got the opportunity to sit with a board member and Ty Rhodes at a table, and we had breakouts of about 8, and we were talking about going 3 buildings to 2, and I was the only one to vote for 3. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of interesting. But after I listened to them and heard and how thought the process was, I was like, wow, that makes sense. And so it feels like some people it's been rushed. Other people, it feels like it's been going on forever. And it's a balance of trying to figure that all out. And I've just been really impressed just being the opportunity just to sit and listen and be involved. And just to hear, like the Ross were talking about, they know one of the biggest growing areas is not a college degree. They didn't want to leave that part out. We didn't want to leave out fine arts. We didn't want to leave out the education, obviously. We have the highest suicide rates in history going on, and natural light's one of the big. Things change, and how do you adapt to all that? And what is the building requirements for that? And how does that all play? So, I looked at a few things going on here. Retain and recruit. And we can take that 2 different ways. Number 1 is retain our staff, administration we got today. The second one is recruiting. Who's going to come in? We taxpayers hate paying taxes. These people have one of the most important jobs of our future of our kids, and we pay them like dirt because we don't want to pay taxes. This is one of the ways we can help them, give them the best things to move forward. As Mr. Proctor said, we have a good school district. But Hesston strives to be great. This town was not built on just what can we get by with. We have 2 huge corporations built in this town from Hesston people. That was not built on what can we get by with. We're a progressive town. This was a progressive school, and it kind of backfired a little bit, I think, 6 years later. Because the hexagon was probably pretty progressive at the time. And now it's probably not as great of an idea. But how do we adapt to that? How do we move forward? Do we just keep band-aiding, or do we get a little progressive? We could have been a little bit cheaper. I will admit that. I don't agree with 100% of everything of this bond. I might agree with 80% of it, but I'm not going to get hung up on changing our school just because of my personal preferences. So when I looked at this and I started going back, I'm a numbers guy. What was the bond issue in 2002 is 19 total mills. This one's just over 20. It's $33 million. That's a whole lot of money, but we're at an all-time lowest ever interest rate. You combine the two, that's why our mill levies are about the same. That's why the inflation is outrageous, is because the interest rates are so doggone low. That's just how economics works, that I learned at the school. So, we have to look at that. How are we going to recruit? I got the opportunity to go to my son-in-law's graduation at K-State in education in December. You talk about a sad room. There is not very many kids sitting in that room. And there's not very many, my son-in-law is not even going into education now. And I'm sad about that. Who's going to teach our kids? So how are they going to pick us over Halstead or Hillsborough or whatever school district it is? We always think we're good. But these kids are choosing, and the pool is smaller. So then I look at me as a community person. I have a business, but I also believe in this town. How do we retain people here, and how do we recruit people to Hesston? Our entertainment district isn't really strong. I don't know what else we have much to offer. This is kind of where we're at. But I think that's why there's a lot of people here. I have a ton of family, I have a ton of friends. They don't work in Hesston. How do I recruit? How do I get them to come to Hesston to work for me? I'm kind of relying on this. So, the other issue is, if we choose not to pass this, inflation's going really well, interest rates have to go up, and they're already talking about it. We can delay this for a couple years, and we might save a little bit of money, but we're going to lose a whole lot. So, I just looked at, you guys can run the numbers as easy as I can. I'm not going to quote you numbers, but the interest rate in 2002 was 5%. We're a little over 2. This bond issue should be over $10 million less. Would that feel a lot better if somebody told you we're doing a $22 million bond issue instead of 30 or 3? Last 30 years, the highest on the bond issues is in the 90s was 7%. We'd be less than 20 million for the same thing. So, I've been very proud to be involved with these people, to listen. I wouldn't have been in probably favor if I would have just got on today, right off the bat. I really appreciate the people that are coming forward and listening to these people, the people that work there. Education's going to change. We know that. The demands are going to change. It's fun to go through this project, but it's not fun when we're trying to make it less. Because we all had a worksheet and we're supposed to find it. One mill, we had to, basically 1.3 million we had to remove each time. So, state aid is down 10%. It's only 15% instead of 25%. If we had the same amount of state aid right now, our mills total might be less than it was in 2002. So please take into consideration of all the things. How does it affect you? How does it affect the town? How does it affect the school district? How does it affect us retaining our current administration? How does it affect us getting new teachers? We have a phenomenal alumni at Hesston because we have phenomenal parents that came through and grandparents. We've had a phenomenal industries come through here. But the alumni, these teachers, I sit there and see Carl Boyer, he could name off for hours of the people he taught and what they're doing today. It's been really cool what this town has done, and I'm really excited to see what these kids do. I don't have any kids in the district right now. I have commercial property. It's not going to be cheap. A $200,000 home somewhere between $7,000 and $8,000 in 30 years from now. Is your house going to be worth more or less than that in 30 years if we don't do a thing right now? Something to think about. Questions?
Thank you, Jim. I'm Jerry Miniger. I graduated Hesston High School in 1997, attended school here K through 12. I have 2 older brothers who also graduated from here. 3 daughters myself, who 2 of them, the oldest 2, graduated from here, and I've got a 5th grader who's currently in school. I was asked by Ben to be a part of the steering committee, and it's been a great honor. I joined the group in the summer, and as Jim kind of has mentioned, he stole a lot of my thunder there, by the way. Yeah, a lot of my lines. It's part of going first. But one of the very first meeting we had, there was a proposal that kind of threw some project plans up, and one of them was eliminating the middle school and combining 5 through 12 all over in this building. Right away, I was, I'm a little apprehensive about that, and I wasn't just thinking about myself. I was thinking about kind of this community and how we've always had 3 buildings. We have a elementary school, middle school, high school. There's that's what we know. And we pride ourselves at kind of being, setting the bar and saying, we're this school district and we do really well, and we do. Why would we change something that works so well? And it wasn't until I had an opportunity to hear from all of the faculty, the people who are actually with our kids, the people who are actually going to create the schedule where they talk about breaking it apart and how we'll have these 2 separate wings and we can create a schedule where the kids won't interact, 5th graders won't be interacting with seniors, etc. That I realized that, it's kind of just my feelings. This is kind of what I knew. There's change, right? And change can be good, change can be negative at times, but the way that these guys talk to us about it, and what they're able to do, and the advantages for all of the kids, long term, it outweighs what I've known, and what I grew up with, and what I was just used to. I think there are some tremendous opportunities for the kids going forward. These guys all mentioned in terms of the seniors, we heard about it from the faculty. I don't need to stand up here and echo everything that's already been said, but as Jim said, don't take an opportunity to kind of sit back, think about what's been discussed here this evening before you're actually truly kind of making your decision on what you're going to do when the vote comes up. But there are tremendous opportunities, and we need to invest in our future. We've done a lot here in this community where we've kind of piecemealed things together. We did some construction over at the middle school years ago, but nothing really substantial that we were able to kind of look back and say, hey, we really made a vast improvement to the building over there. I think the opportunity that we would have by moving the kids over here, having one facility, we would have something long-term that we'd be proud in, as opposed to potentially doing something over there and after our 30-year bond have something that we're still looking at and saying that's an aged building, and we might need to be doing something even more long-term after that. So the opportunity to have something over here that would be substantial enough. We're adding the auditorium, which I'll echo again is huge for Lyle and for Mrs. Funk. Giving back to these kids, we've always done a lot of stuff for athletics. I think fine arts has been one that we've kind of put on the back burner for a long, long time. This is an opportunity to give them a jewel, something that the community can also enjoy as well. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I realized I'm the only thing standing between you and going home, so I'll try to be brief. My name is Megan Smith, and I'm a 2003 graduate of Hesston High School. We have 2 sons in the district, a kindergartner and a 3rd grader. And my husband and I have been a part of the project from the facility steering committee and the work that began over the summer. I can tell you that what you have seen and what has been proposed is the product of collaboration on many different levels, which I feel like is one of the primary things that defines being a SWATher. There have been surveys that community members have completed. There have been conversations at the education level with teachers and staff, committees that have reviewed each of the buildings and brought forth needs and priorities and recommendations that have created what you have seen today. It's not something that was just pulled out of the blue. This is something that's being presented after very thorough thought and analysis and conversation. There were several different opportunities that were presented to the committee by the architect. This isn't the most expensive option, believe that, believe it or not. And so This is the option that the committee felt like serves our students and our teachers, which is what this is really about, the best over the long haul. This is the option that the committee and the educators feel like will serve our students long-term in the best way possible and allow us to educate in the best way possible. I think you've heard it answered in a couple of different ways. Some of the concerns and questions about the 5 through 12, very separate wings, but opportunities that will be presented that wouldn't otherwise be available. It was something new for me to learn that 5 through 12 is more common than I was aware of. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the opportunity for a 5th or 7th grader to take foreign language before they might have otherwise been able to, or robotics, or some of the other things that have been talked about. So I hope that if you still have questions in that area, that you take time to visit with one of our administrators. I guess I would just close by adding that this is planning for the next generation. Someone did this for me. If you're a grandparent, someone did it for your kids in this district. And I look at this project as not handing off something that's not in great shape, not passing a project that we're patchworking together because we're trying to piecemeal things. We're putting together a project that sets the stage for the next generation and the generation after that. And we're handing something off that is a really great final product that continues the level of education and success that we've seen at USD 460 and allows us to continue to do that at a high level. I wouldn't feel comfortable standing before you today if I hadn't been confident in the process that we got to today, the number of people that have been involved, the thought that's been behind it, and what I believe is the next best step for our district to be successful moving forward.
Thank you, guys. Okay, it's been kind of a long evening, and appreciate all of your perseverance and patience. A lot of great questions, and there's a lot that I want to share about those questions. But I know that, you know, after a couple of hours, some folks may need to go, but we do not want to limit interaction at all. Part of our goal in providing these opportunities is to do everything we can to inform. And I tell people, I don't know that we're always going to be able to answer a question and have an answer that everybody's going to like. It's not necessarily that type of project that everybody's going to be in complete agreement that this is the direction to go. And we talked about that a lot as a committee. But we want to be able to provide really good information and perspective on all those different ideas. You know, to speak specifically, I talked to or communicated with about 40 districts that do at least 712, if not 512, 412, 612, or K12. A lot of them similar sized districts, and heard almost identical responses in every case. We thought it was going to be a real concern when we moved to having young kids with older kids, so we had all these rules. These are school districts telling me we put all these rules in place because we were so concerned, and the community was so concerned about combining young kids and older kids, and all but one said we've relaxed so much of that, and we've seen so many positive things from that, because you have expectations and you have good people that put those structures in place to make it a very positive experience, and you can trust our people to do that. We have got amazing people in our school system, and I know you know that. So there is a lot of trust that goes into the things that we're proposing. But as we go through the next few weeks and months, we want to be very accessible and answer all of your questions. You know, things about programs that we can offer, or efficiencies with staffing. We can spend more time on those things because I know those are really important questions. We feel like we're going to have a lot of opportunities, and there's so much potential with the things that we're proposing here. But we have another meeting on Thursday. It's going to be, if you guys will come back after a long evening, a lot of the same people who are going to share. We just want to kind of have a repeated opportunity to share the same information, just like we did earlier in the month, but we will continue engaging in whatever form and fashion we need to. And I love sitting down. I've gotten to meet people that I've heard names over the years. I've been in Hesston now for 10 years, and have gotten to meet people that I knew names but never knew the people. And just sitting down and talking about, you know, the 2002 bond, or just history that I wasn't aware of, has been wonderful. And there's been times where we haven't even agreed on whether or not we should pass this particular bond, but we're just talking through the processes and sharing ideas, and feel like that's very important. So if you have questions, please reach out to me. I'd love to sit down with you or talk on the phone. These guys, I know the same, and we've got a lot of staff that can share perspective too. So we don't want to limit that at all, but we also know at some point you have to end a meeting and go on and brave the cold, because I hear it's cold outside now. So any final questions as we kind of close out this meeting, or thoughts about, the next steps in the process? I will tell you, importantly, the Board of Education right now has a meeting scheduled on March 1st at 6 p.m. And that meeting will be an opportunity for our board to decide if they want to finalize a resolution for the bond project. And it would include the potential recommendation that was made by the steering committee. They have not taken action on that at this time, but we'll consider that on March 1. At 6 p.m. we will likely host that over at the elementary school 1-2 Commons, and we'll get information out on that. We have a process that we have to go through to get that information to the county, and we need to do that by early March. So that's kind of a formal step in the process. So, other questions that I can answer for you this evening? Yes, sir.
First off, I'd like to say thank you to the steering committee. Obviously, you don't see me on it because I didn't think I had time or whatever, so I appreciate you guys taking that time for us. It's a big responsibility, so from the community and for me, thank you for taking that upon yourself. I guess my question is, after listening to everything I've heard tonight, we're going to be, we passed this and we're on the hook for a big chunk of change. Do we feel confident? Because what Jerry said is exactly true. I don't want to be 5-10 years into this thing going, oh man, we should have done X, Y, and Z. Do we feel confident that we are at the place that we want to be, and not almost? Does that make sense? Because I taught Newton for a long time. Newton did a lot of almost. And so it was we're throwing the rock back in the pond every, and I would like to avoid that if we can, if we're going to be on for 33 million and 35 gets it, does that make sense, Jerry?
Part of the steering committee, one of the things that we did was we assessed, we kind of looked at the dollars and we said, okay, 33 million, but that ended up, there was a point in time where we were looking at kind of taking things off of the map. And we didn't want to do that, because the moment you start doing that, you're actually limiting what some of these key things that we're talking about, the shop, maybe what's happening here, maybe you start taking these things off, and then when this bond is thrown out there, what's going to happen? The community is going to be asking, well, where is that auditorium? Where's this? Where's that? What's being proposed was a collaboration, as Megan said, and what we determined was this is the best thing that we can come up with for these students, for the future. And it's touching all of those pieces. We're going to touch the shop, we're touching fine arts, we're adding some stuff for athletics, but a huge investment in the academic wing, which is, that's the heart of it, right? So I would say that you have to be kind of careful, and I think we identified a number that we felt suited the need for this project.
I would echo everything Jerry said. A question that's come up from time to time, do we know what education is going to look like? And we know there's, some trends towards remote working and remote learning and all those things. And what I can tell you, and this is just my own personal perspective, there is no replacement for a great teacher that the kids are around and great coaches that the kids are around. We said that right here in the summer of 2020, after we had just shut down school. And we said that going into that school year, that shutting down school for Hesston schools is not an option, because we know how important it is for kids to be around great teachers and great coaches. And our investment is in that. That's just not something that is a part of our planning down the road. We want to build spaces where our kids and our staff can be successful with each other. So, but that is a question that I receive quite often. Other questions this evening or thoughts? Bill?
We didn't talk about financials very much this evening, but one of the questions on here was choosing the length of the bond. And maybe
So,
that a little bit.
yes. One of the things on our website, you'll see a lot of financial information there. Again, these red links will share. We've got one called Mill Levy Worksheet, one called Mill Levy Impact that includes farm and commercial property as well. We have a bond council, so we work with Stiefel out of Wichita. We've worked with them on the bond that we're paying off in September as well. And one of the things that we talked about whenever we were considering the term was the interest rate and having extremely low interest rates. And Steve Shogren from Stiefel, I think it's safe for me to say, is a pretty conservative person and advises as such. And we've talked a lot, even early on, about 30 years versus 25 years versus 20 years. And because of that really low interest rate, we have the ability to pay off early. We have the ability to lower that mill levy over time based on the variables that we're including into that formula, which would include assessed valuation. And we've seen our valuations go up at a higher rate than what was calculated, which is why we've gone from 19 mills down to 12 mills on this current bond that we're paying off. So we see a lot of advantages in keeping that mill levy as low as possible. Jim mentioned just some comparisons with 02 and 2022, and we're going to put that, we'll put a link to that so you can see the size of the projects. But something that I found just last week that was kind of interesting is that the 1 year over difference, so the 01 to 02 change in the mill levy is actually about 1.3 mils higher than what we're proposing here. So it was 11.91 mil increase, it's about 10.61 from what we're looking at now. So just I was a little bit surprised by that. The total mills, as Jim said, are a little bit higher. A lot of that has to do with a reduction in state aid, but you can see a lot of that, the financial implications there on those links, and we'll continue providing that information. It's hard talking about school finance at 9 o'clock after a 2-hour meeting, but again, holler at me anytime. If you had a question that you just don't feel like it was addressed, please let me know. I'd love to visit with you or shoot me an email, call anytime. We just want to continue to provide good information. Again, the meeting on Thursday, you're going to hear, if you come, a lot of the same presentation. Questions may be different, those types of things, so feel free to come back, but please spread the word. We want people to come, and we will continue hosting meetings if we need to, or going out to visit with others. We do visit with the senior center folks on Thursday morning as well, so please don't hesitate to holler anytime. Yes, Mr.
Sorry,
Rhodes.
you mentioned just like our building will be open before the 2 if they want to come around.
Yes, and so from 5 to 7, if you're interested in touring either the middle school, high school, or both, please come during that time. If you can't do that's on Thursday. If you can't do it then, we will continue to schedule opportunities to get in the buildings all throughout March and April. And if you want to just come, holler at me and I can walk you through too. So, okay? All right. Thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Good job, you guys.
Yeah.